friends. Welcome to the Living Truth Podcast. This is Kristin Carey with my husband, Michael Carey.
Hello.
Today, we are going to talk about our marriage.
Yes, it is a deep subject.
And you guys might think that because we host a podcast and lead a ministry, that somehow we have nailed life and marriage. And you guys need to know we're human, just as human as anybody listening to this podcast is. We are very much in process. So we'll go with a little backstory and then kind of bring us up into today. But before we dive in, I want to invite you guys, if you haven't already, would you take a moment to rate and review the Living Truth Podcast? When you do that, it just gives the algorithm a boost for this particular podcast. And it helps more people looking for help from unwanted sexual behavior and sexual betrayal to find the help that we're offering. Yes. We would really appreciate you doing that. Mm-hmm. So I'll just tell you guys, we got married in 2010 and we're a blended family. So when we got married, I had a 5-year-old son. Michael had a 9-year-old daughter. And then together, 17 months later, we welcomed Ella. So we are a yours, mine, and ours blended family, which I will say, yes, complicates things quite a bit.
Those that say it's easy to blend a family or whatever it is, maybe they're lying.
I've never heard anybody say that.
I don't know.
Have you?
Only once.
Okay.
And they think that... I'm going to treat my stepkids exactly like my own children. I just don't think that it's possible because especially, you have this relationship with this child for years before you even meet your spouse. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to just, it sounds great, but I don't think that it's possible because of all of the different underlying parts and triggers and all the different things that happen on an individual basis, right?
Yeah, but let's go back to even before we got married. We met in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And...
September.
Yep, September 2009. And we had both been through really painful, difficult divorces. And we had both been looking and hoping God would bring the right person into our lives.
Sure.
And... wow, the prospect of actually making that plunge to make a commitment to marriage was both exciting and terrifying for both of us, right?
Yeah.
So anything you want to share about the story of that year between when we met and that process of falling in love and then making the decision to get engaged a year later? Anything you want to share about the backstory before we got married?
Well, yeah, you mentioned it. We were both really scared. We knew that, all of the wedded bliss and all of the fantasy of having this beautiful relationship without arguing and without problems and stuff like that did not exist. So, we were more realistic. And we also knew a little bit more about the idea of relationship, I think, where you get swept away in this dopamine rush, the newness, the attraction, the physical attraction, and the excitement. And so unconsciously we overlook, some of the things, some of the stuff, which is not always terrible, right?
Sometimes we don't ever show it to each other.
That's
not
true.
Necessarily purposefully deceiving.
Right.
Sometimes that is true. There are people listening to this who they hid their unwanted sexual behavior from their spouse before they got married.
Right. Right.
And we were fortunate enough to both be in recovery before we got engaged and to have those issues, like our sexual history issues, out on the table.
Yeah.
And to be in therapy before we even got engaged, like together even.
Right. Yeah. So I was surrendered. I was in a state of surrender and really I didn't know what I was looking for. I was looking for the real way out. And I was totally surrendered to God at whatever that looked like. I was going to do it. And you introduced me to your therapist's husband, who was also a therapist, and I started seeing him and started going to a recovery program. And yeah, so it was, I see a lot of guys in recovery and Men in the Battle and other recovery programs alike who, they need to see their, the train wreck of their behavior in order for them to hit a bottom. And being divorced and just witnessing, my own behavior over the years, I knew that if I didn't do something about this, I would take this problem into my next marriage. I knew that God had another spouse for me. And so I was so hungry and ready that as soon as recovery was introduced to me, I ate it up. That I remember that first meeting with my therapist. At the beginning, he said, there's a couple of books that I'm going to recommend to you. And then towards the end, I'm not sure if he did this on purpose or not, but he told me the title of one of the books. And I said, I'm not leaving until you give me the title of the other one. And I drove right to the bookstore at that point. Yeah, back in 2009, they still had bookstores where you can go. Well, there's still Barnes & Noble around, but, those books were actually on the shelf. At least one of them was. And I bought it, started reading it, and just dove right in. So that process of leaning into marriage, being in recovery, not everybody gets a chance to do that. Mm-hmm. So in most cases, there's a train wreck and then they're divorced and then maybe they marry somebody who's, not necessarily in that addictive pattern or whatever the case is. I mean, there's so many different stories out there, but most of the stories that we see, they have that discovery, D-Day, train wreck, and then repair, the couples that do repair, right? So, going into a marriage, having an understanding of the psychology of the way that we trigger one another, and understanding, the just the backstory of where so many arguments come from, and the challenges of marriage, I think really did help us, set us up for some success. But what is success?
I was just going to say, what does that mean?
Success. We're still married.
We are still married. Yes.
Is that success? Well, I mean,
I guess, and our marriage is better than it ever has been. I mean, progression, right? Progress, not perfection.
Right.
So I guess that is success. It's just that people are so black and white in their minds about rebuild your marriage and it's going to be this like blissful outcome. And the reality is we live in a broken, fallen world. And both of us come from families with a lot of trauma. And so we have a lot of attachment injuries. And we trigger each other. Just like I would be triggered no matter who I got married to, because wherever I go, there I am. Mm-hmm. And wherever you go, there you are, right?
As soon as you get around someone, there's bound to be something that's going to remind you of the past, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you think you've worked through your whole past.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is we made the choice to go ahead and get engaged. And I remember when we got engaged, we had been in a pre-engagement counseling because we were both so concerned about getting hurt again and hurting each other again that we wanted to not make the decision to get married, just the two of us, because, we knew love does not conquer all. We knew there are some raw material elements that we each need to have in ourselves and to be able to trust in the other to know that we could have a shot at having a healthy marriage long term. Mm-hmm. And for me, that very thing that you described of going to the bookstore and buying the books that your therapist asked you to read immediately and devouring them, and then you taking the initiative to set up weekly appointments with your therapist, not because I was pushing it, but because you had already been seeking healing and wholeness and recovery before I ever met you. And I saw evidence of that. But while we were in our relationship, dating, before we got engaged even, your drive to recover and your drive to work on your own healing was a big part of what drew me to you and made me decide it would be worth the risk, the heartache risk. I mean, anytime we enter into marriage with another person, we are risking heartbreak and heartache. But I decided, with God's help and leading, that it was worth it, both because I could see your willingness and because as we asked our therapists for input, these were amazing Christian therapists that had seen us individually and then were seeing us together. And I remember one of our therapists saying, if anybody could make marriage work and make it good, it would be you two. Mm-hmm. And that willingness.
The blended family, specifically,
that
like
too.
you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know in the beginning, dating, going through the pre-engagement counseling, and then premarital counseling, and then post-marriage counseling. we were okay. So we were in individual counseling before that, then pre-engagement, and then premarital counseling, post-marriage counseling. And when did we stop getting counseling?
Well, we have gone several years at a time in different seasons where we're not going to marriage counseling. In fact, we do have a marriage counselor. I think we went through an intensive with him, 3 years ago? And in the summer, I think it was 3 years ago.
2021, 2020, I don't remember.
And then we saw him occasionally for the next year. I don't think we've seen him for marriage counseling for a good year and a half. But this therapist, we both see him individually for family of origin work, trauma work, and also internal family systems work individually. And he has confirmed with you recently, I don't think you guys need to see me for marriage because we have tools to navigate having a healthy relationship because of all the work we've done in the past, right?
Yeah, I asked him if we should start coming back for marriage counseling, and he said, I think you should try and work some of those things out by yourself. And coming into the office and talking to him about it, and it's been really helpful. Yeah, for sure. So, but I would bring, going all the way back then to, my head is kind of spinning with it. My point was to say, when did we stop? Well, we didn't really stop. We're open to the idea of going back to marriage counseling, right? And I think that really is critical to have that openness, to be ready to go back if we needed to even ask the counselor, and then have him say, I don't think you need that right now, and what have you. Yeah, that's, so I think that's super healthy. But going back to the engagement and then early on in marriage, there were a couple of things that that struck me was, yes, there were challenges right away because of blending a family, because of having this relationship with, and in this case, we had two only children, and they had access to us one-on-one for years. And so that is certainly going to cause some kind of issues, of course, and just trying to work that out. The kids loved each other at first, but it was the spouse, I think, just and the complexity of now I have to share my parent with this other person. For sure, there's going to be issues, and so a couple of things that occurred to me early on in marriage too, and engagement. But the deal is, so first of all, I think that, sure, there's a lot of benefits to being single. If you read through the Apostle Paul talking about singleness, you can travel all around the world and minister to everybody, and you don't have to worry about having a spouse and making co-decisions or whatever it is. But honestly, I think that being married is better than being single, at least certainly is for me. And one of the reasons, so that was one choice, one decision, that I had was being married is definitely better than being single. And honestly, one of the reasons
and
is
to clarify for the listeners, for you in particular, some people are called to be single, and that is good and is a gift. Yeah.
That's what I was talking about with, quoting the Apostle Paul,
Sure.
and that kind of thing. But some people are called to be single. So I said, for me, it's definitely better to be married. And one of the reasons is because when I was single, I was not challenged I wanted to grow. I wanted to change. I wanted to become a better person, but you just can't see as much of your junk until you're face to face with it every day. I want to say, whatever the challenges and the triggers, the arguments, the different things come up. I knew that I had a lot of problems and I was messed up when I was single. But when I got married, I realized I was way more screwed up than I thought I was. Right?
How about let's use the term traumatized and broken?
Right.
Yeah,
brokenness is
we're
a less
both
judgmental way.
Very broken.
It's a less judgmental way to say it. Yeah. Brokenness is a kind way of saying screwed up, right? But the deal is, if I'm not challenged, and it's not that you don't have to challenge me. That's not necessarily your responsibility.
No, it's not like I'm trying to challenge you.
Right.
I just challenge you by existing. And you challenge me by existing,
just
right?
By walking in the room and opening your mouth.
By virtue of our attachment styles and patterns with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. So the deal is, I think that
we trigger each other all kinds.
I think that's part of God's design.
It is.
Part of God's design is to use the marriage relationship to help us see the areas that we need to grow in, right? And in order to have a better marriage, I must grow in those areas. If I don't, then my marriage is not going to get better, and I want a better marriage. I want to be a better husband, a better father, a better everything, a better son of God. And so that just really propelled me to want deeper growth and healing, and to realize in those moments when we are triggering one another, it is uncomfortable. I still don't like it.
It's so uncomfortable.
I don't like pain.
Downright painful.
I don't like feeling emotional pain. I don't like being in emotional pain. I mean, I'm not sure if is there anyone who enjoys that? I don't enjoy that. But when I emerge from feeling that and start to grow and to change, I realized that it was worth it.
Right, because pain can be used to burn off the extra stuff or to heal and purify the trauma that from our past that's being triggered today. It can also inform us on how we can treat each other better, how we can value and hear and love and care for each other better. So it is worth it. It is totally worth it with two people who are willing. But we've had seasons where one of us is in a more emotionally healthy place than the other, and then vice versa. Seasons where one person is more triggered than the other, and then the other is more reactive. It's a journey, right?
Absolutely.
I would do it all over again, though. Would you? With you, not with just any random. Just to clarify.
Well, that's the thing, is we do get to do it all over again tomorrow. We go to sleep
every day.
Every day is a choice, and it's a choice to stay committed, to realize that whatever happens today, and that's the other cool thing, is seeing the repair. It isn't necessarily the arguments and the pain that, we've hurt each other,
sure,
right, in ways that we've hurt one another, and it is a choice to get up and to work on repairing it. But I think, after years of just seeing that cycle of resolving the conflict over and over again, sometimes even in the moment, it still can feel a little catastrophic, right?
Especially when it hooks our primary wounds from when we were young. And one of the best tools I think we've had in our toolbox is EFT, which stands for emotionally focused therapy. And we've done this with our therapist. We've also done an intensive retreat weekend using emotionally focused therapy. And it is a really awesome form of therapy based on attachment theory. We're not recommending this for couples in early recovery. If you don't have truth on the table and safety and stability, this type of marriage counseling is not recommended. But if you're post-disclosure, if there's some good empathy and connection, if there's safety and stabilization, and you've been able to start the process of grieving together, the next step for your marriage may very well be this type of marriage counseling. So it's not just let's look at communicating better and the typical surface stuff that really isn't the issue. The issue is the pain points deep beneath the surface. And what EFT calls cycling, where you react to your pain points in a certain way, and then you are reactive in a way that triggers my pain points, and then I trigger yours, and it goes in a circle, right? And so dismantling that by knowing and studying and being aware of one another's wounds, but also really the only thing I can be responsible for is dealing with my own triggers and my own anxiety, my own pain, and my own narratives that I believe that are rooted in lies, to deal with my own healing so that when you hurt me, I don't take it into a deep, dark pit of cycling, right? And same thing with you. Doing our individual work is absolutely critical. And I know a lot of people who are married to somebody who is not willing to do their work. They're not willing to look at themselves and see how they contribute to the problems in the marriage and to work on repairing it. That is a really sad and hard place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we're really fortunate to have found ourselves in a place where we know each other's wounds, and that sometimes we are able to step out of our own longing and desire to be right or heard, and able to step into being there for one another.
Yeah. And one thing I was thinking about, I wanted to point out of what I teach guys and men in the battle who, for sure, their marriage may have had a lot of problems from both sides, the husband and the wife, prior to his sexual secrets coming out and these different things. What I teach guys, first of all, is, what she needs for safety and stability, is to see you grow. So, when it comes to that idea, to some of these guys, it gives the appearance that she isn't growing and that there isn't two parties that are willing to grow and stuff like that. And while that's not true, she's doing her work. She's trying to get to that place, like in Women in the Battle, of safety and stabilization. He needs to just work on himself and let her get the help and the healing that she needs at her own pace. And the more that he grows, the more that he pursues that healing himself and growth, the more safe she's going to feel, and the more she will be invited eventually to work on, the whatever junk she brought into the marriage too, because we do both bring stuff into a marriage.
But of course, we remind our listeners that when one party drops a bomb of sexual acting out and secrets on the other party, the party who has been betrayed, the idea of them needing to grow or deal with their previous patterns of dysfunction, whatever those might be, is off the table. The same way you wouldn't ask somebody who just got in a car wreck and is laying in a ditch bleeding out to walk and do a bunch. The priority for quite a while has to be truth, safety, stability, and all of that.
She's laying in the hospital bed, and he says, "Let's go start training for that marathon again."
No, not on the table.
Good analogy.
Not on the table, but there does come a time where we're all broken people, right? And I'm not saying that the person who has been betrayed needs to take any ownership for the sexual acting out. Although the person with the unwanted sexual behavior may want to place blame on the betrayed partner, that is a cop-out, and it absolutely was not her fault.
Yes, and I've heard, here's just a couple of examples that I've heard from guys early on in the program and different things like, she doesn't respect me, she is critical, she doesn't, she always, always, or whatever it is. That's a key word for black and white thinking, always.
For blame.
She always says this to me or does that, or she doesn't want to have sex with me as often as I need it, these different things. And none of those, none of those are reasons to go look at porn, to have an affair. Like those are completely
it's all excuses.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Personal responsibility for your sexual behavior is 100% imperative.
Right. That's like saying, my bank account was a little low, so I went and held up a bank, isn't that what everybody does? It's like, it sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't to him sometimes in the midst of it. So the real thing is we take responsibility for our own behavior.
Yes. Returning to the topic of us and our marriage, that is one of the things that I most appreciate about our marriage and our processing together is the ability we each have to work on ourselves. So, even recently I asked for some things for you to address in our marriage and on yourself and how it was impacting our marriage. And you immediately did the things I asked you to do. Like that level of trustworthiness by knowing, like, I don't have to follow up and be like, hey, are you going to do this? Hey, are you going to do this? Hey, are you going to do this? Because I know you'll do it. I see it in the calendar. I know you're doing the work that you need to do to continue to heal yourself. And for the record, friends, we are both still very much in need of doing our own work. And I hear people say all the time, how long is this going to take? Like, how long am I going to be in pain? Mercifully, God allows reprieve in seasons, and it's not just all pain all the time. However, pain pockets do emerge in our lives at different times, and we do still need to do some serious work. It depends on how much healing you want.
But that's some of the recent pain that we've gone through has not been about hurting each other, but it's about other circumstances and things that we were going through, and we've gotten to a place where we're hurting each other less and we're able to be there for each other during these other outside circumstances that are causing pain, right?
Yeah. But that maturity to take responsibility for ourselves and to work on ourselves is a key foundation for the healing that we need. So, friends, we will continue this conversation in another episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, I am holding out hope for you.